10 countries you didn't know existed. Number 10. The Republic of Lakota. Most people wouldn't believe it if you said there is a country the size of Syria in the middle of the United States of America, but the inhabitants of the Republic of Lakota would argue that there is. Stretching over 1,600 kilometers, Lakota is the homeland of the Lakota Sioux, an ancient tribe who lived there long before the European colonial settlers. In 1868, the American government signed the Treaty of Laramie, giving the Lakota Sioux the rights to the land. However, in the 1870s, the government apparently forgot this promise when they allowed thousands of miners to swarm to the land with the promise of gold. Today, the Lakota still consider themselves an independent state, and they are fighting for international recognition. Number 9. Transnistria. Transnistria has its own president, parliament, currency, and army. It even won a war of independence in 1992, yet some people still argue that it's part of Moldova. In 1990, Moldova broke away from the USSR. This was a decision that Transnistria, a thin strip of land on the border of Moldova and Ukraine, didn't agree with. Transnistria, with its population of more than 500,000, still felt a strong allegiance to Russia. They wished to declare themselves a socialist republic and remain part of the USSR, and so they fought a war to achieve this. But by the time a ceasefire was reached and Transnistria was able to make steps towards its goal, the Soviet Union had crumbled. This threw Transnistria into disarray, and their official status as a country remained unresolved. Number 8. Barotseland. Located between Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Angola, Barotseland is home to a unified group of diverse tribes. Historically, the region used to be an independent nation, but it was incorporated into Zambia in 1964. Its current claim for independence comes from the idea that it was incorporated into Zambia under false pretenses, as the 1964 treaty between the two peoples had promised autonomy to Barotseland that it did not receive. Instead, Barotseland was just treated like any other province. After years of rising tensions, the Barotseland National Council retaliated by declaring its independence from Zambia in March 2012. If it were to become internationally recognized, this would make Barotseland the world's youngest nation-state. Number 7. Chinland. Chinland, whose territories originally included parts of Myanmar, Bangladesh, and India, is home to around 1.5 million people. They consist of 6 major unique ethnic groups who speak a total of 20 languages. When the British Empire began to decline during the 1940s, Chinland was unofficially swallowed up into what was then called Burma. In March 1988, the Chin National Front was established. This was in reaction to the fact that, in its current state, the Chin people didn't have any exclusive rights, despite having their own leaders and national day. Chin nationalists believe that thanks to their rich history, distinct culture, and independent political system, they are a country in their own right. But the UN continues to consider them as part of former Burma, Myanmar. Number 6. Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Located in Western Sahara in Africa, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, also known as the Saharan Arab Democratic Republic, declared independence in 1976. Almost a third of the countries in the UN recognize the state, but the rest still consider it part of Morocco. For almost a century, the region had been a Spanish colony until Spain withdrew in 1976 and things just got a little complicated. Morocco, Mauritania, and the indigenous inhabitants of Western Sahara all lay claim to the territory, leading to a bitter conflict. In 1979, Mauritania abandoned its claim, but Morocco remains stubborn. It has repeatedly postponed referenda on the topic, and the UN's efforts to resolve the conflict have proved inconclusive. Number 5. Abkhazia. You would think that having a distinct ethnic population, historically defined boundaries, a separate military, a government, a national bank, and its own passports would be enough for a region to gain country status. But this isn't the case for Abkhazia. At the beginning of the 11th century, Abkhazia was very much its own country, only to then be subsumed into Georgia, and then, centuries later, the USSR. When the USSR collapsed in 1991, things got a bit confusing. Abkhazia declared a return to their medieval borders, winning a war of independence against Georgia in 1993. Surprisingly, despite this victory, all but 4 members of the UN still refused to recognize Abkhazia as anything other than a province of Georgia. Number 4. Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. Nagorno-Karabakh is yet another region whose country status has been utterly complicated by the messy dissolution of the Soviet Union. Following the 1991 collapse of the USSR, Nagorno-Karabakh became the central focus of a war between Azerbaijan, the country that completely surrounds it, and the region's ethnic Armenian majority. A truce was signed in 1994, putting temporary control of the region, known to its inhabitants as Artsakh, into the hands of the ethnic Armenians. Now, despite Nagorno-Karabakh having its own government, military, and even a legal constitution, no other country in the world recognizes its legitimacy. This is because negotiations have failed to produce a permanent peace agreement that the UN could recognize. Number 3. Balochistan. A vast province that makes up 44% of Pakistan, Balochistan is a region that has been clouded by turmoil for well over half a century. Baloch nationalists argue that the province is actually an independent nation, even celebrating August the 11th, 1947 as their Independence Day. They assert that on this day, towards the end of British rule in Pakistan, the British gave Balochistan autonomy, only for Pakistan to overturn this decision, illegally annexing the region less than a year later. Since then, the Pakistani government has used military force to quell independence uprisings in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Number 2. South Ossetia. In 2006, the people of South Ossetia in Georgia held a referendum that demonstrated its people's desire to become an independent nation. The small but proud population of 50,000 people have their own language and are ethnically closer to Russia's Ossetians than their fellow Georgians. Since then, South Ossetia has been effectively independent, with their own government and president, Leonid Tibilov. Sadly, the referendum result and subsequent South Ossetian Declaration of Independence went unrecognized by the international community, with the exception of Russia. 2 years later, Georgia sent tanks into the country to stop the growing unrest with force, only serving to aggravate the situation further and increase the tensions between the Georgian and South Ossetian governments. Number 1. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Unlike many of the other countries on this list, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta has notable recognition from other countries around the world. It has strong political relations with 105 countries and diplomatic relations with another 6. It even has permanent observer status at the United Nations. Yet, the utterly bizarre thing is, this country has absolutely no physical territory, nor does it claim any. Basically, what happened is that Malta used to be occupied and owned by an order of Catholic knights. When Napoleon invaded Malta in 1798, this order was forced to relocate to Italy, where Catholic nations still continued to recognize them as a legitimate nation. And this has continued to this day, despite the order now only having control of 2 buildings in Rome.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. We really cannot thank you enough. And if you enjoyed it, why don't you check out 10 Weird Wonders of the World. It's playing on screen now and there's a link in the description. So go and check that out. And as always, thank you for watching. Peace.